welcome back to another very exciting episode of the Expansion Project Podcast. I am your host, Fat Tony, and on this show I have casual yet deep conversations with professional athletes, entrepreneurs, investors, coaches, authors, bloggers, musicians, and other successful people in hopes of expanding my mind and yours while motivating and inspiring people along the way. My guest this week is the drummer for the very popular band Fall Out Boy, Andy Hurley. Fall Out Boy has sold millions of albums all around the world. They have several albums that went platinum and double platinum with their sales. Their music videos on YouTube have literally hundreds of millions of views. And recently they played on the finale of The Voice and American Idol. To keep on going, they've got MTV Video Music Awards for Best Music Video, Best Group, and Viewer's Choice. They've got a People's Choice Award. They've got Teen Choice Awards for Best Rock Group and Best Single. And right now, they're currently on tour. Next week, they're heading to the UK, and then they're going to be back in the US June through October for the Boys of Summer Tour with Wiz Khalifa. And then in October, they're going to head back to the UK, hit a couple more countries over in Europe, and even make their way into Russia. Now, you can find out all about their tour on falloutboy.com/tour. And as for Andy himself, he's been the drummer of Fall Out Boy since 2003. He's been on an episode of MTV's Cribs, and he's played and recorded with other bands, hardcore and metal bands, as well as Fall Out Boy. And he owns his own record label called Fuck City. But what I'm really interested in is the fact that he's a vegan, drug-free CrossFit athlete, which I am all those things myself, and finding somebody else that fits into those three parameters is pretty rare. And we'll talk about how we got connected in just a few minutes. In the episode, we talked about the three things we have in common. So we started out with CrossFit and talked all about how he's very passionate about CrossFit, not only as a sports and spectator, but also his personal training. And it even sounds like he might end up being a coach someday, which is really cool. Then we talked about being straight edge and vegan, which again, we both have in common. So it was great to hear his perspective and his experiences with being drug-free and plant-based. Then I asked him all about the business end of what it's like to be a full-time musician. So I talked to him about the early days before he found success, and then now kind of what he's doing to set himself up so that once he's done with the band Fall Out Boy, he's not going to have to worry about working anymore. So it was great to hear all these different perspectives from a musician that I didn't really know before, and I learned a ton, and I think you guys will get a lot of really great insight out of this interview.
Just one mistake is all it will take. We'll go down in history. Remember me for centuries.
Before we jump into the interview, I want to say thank you guys for all the great feedback. I keep saying it on each episode, but you guys keep coming with the feedback, so I'm going to keep thanking you. It's really been amazing to get those text messages and Facebook posts and the emails and all that stuff. And, of course, the iTunes reviews. You guys have been amazing with your iTunes reviews, and I'm going to read a couple of the newest ones right now. So we've got Mike, who goes by the name at X, just the letter X, Crement on Instagram. He's also a vegan, drug-free CrossFitter. And he says, what more could you ask for? Intelligent conversation and perspectives of health and wealth. Two topics I can relate to heavily. As a middle-aged, skateboarding, CrossFit, endurance, vegan athlete, I enjoy hearing different perspectives on training and nutrition, and I like how FT isn't afraid to ask some of the former pro athletes about their finances then and now. So thanks to Mike for that. We also have 2Break Tony on Instagram that said, really a great listen. For all athletes and non-athletes alike, you want extra motivation? This will do it for you. And of course, we do this for motivation, and we do this to inspire and motivate people. So I'm really glad to hear that 2Break Tony can find motivation in what I'm doing over here. And then last but certainly not least, this week we've got Bethers4130. That is John Bethers from Super Ramp Technologies. Says, understanding the life of BMX athletes, the financial choices they've made, and the implications of those choices make are necessary for our sport and lifestyle to grow and mature. Knowing that we're not alone in the decisions we face as we evolve from kids who love riding our bikes to securing a future around something we love is comforting. Hearing a voice and having a platform for us to bounce those ideas around is awesome. Keep up the good work. So again, thanks to you guys for all the love over on the iTunes page. If you want to help support the show through that, please just head over to iTunes on your phone, your tablet, or on your computer. Leave a 5-star review. Leave a 5-star rating, and then also leave a review, and I'll read some of the better reviews here on the show. Also, go to the show's website at theexpansionprojectpodcast.com, and I've got affiliate links set up there for a couple of brands. Nutrisuma is a company that's been hooking me up with some amazing pea protein and some great supplements that help me build muscle and recover after my intense CrossFit workouts. They're giving you 20% off with the promo code FATTONY1. And of course, I'm going to get a little bit of kickback from that as well. So I want to be transparent with you guys and letting you know that the companies that are giving you guys the discount are also going to help me out if you buy something from them. And then my buddy, Chef Kate's, that's Katie Lively, a friend of mine from my local gym. She runs Chef Kate's Nut Butter. And if you go to chefkates.com through the link on my website, then you can get 15% off by using the coupon code FAT15. That's FAT15. And of course, I've got the Amazon link up there. Again, if you buy anything from Amazon through that link, it's going to kick back a little bit of money here to the show, but it won't cost you anything extra. Now, if you've missed any of the previous episodes, you'll definitely want to check out episode 14. That was the last episode, and that was with pro BMX rider JJ Palmer, who is a vegan BMX rider. And him and I sat down and had pretty lengthy conversations and gave our different perspectives on what it's like to be a plant-based athlete. We come from different backgrounds. We have very different ideas on our health and nutrition, but we are both vegan. So I think it's really cool for you to see different perspectives on the topic. Also, Episode 11 was with Dave Mira, and people have still been raving about that one. It's our most popular episode so far, and it's really great. Dave is the most famous BMX rider of all time. He's one of the most decorated BMX athletes ever, and I'm pretty sure he is the highest paid BMX rider ever. He shed some light on what it's like to compete at that kind of high level. He talked about transitioning from a pro BMX rider to a pro endurance athlete, and he does triathlons now. And he also talked about some of his finances, investing, and other businesses that he has going on. So you want to check out all those episodes if you missed anything. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and welcome my guest, Andy Hurley. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I quickly want to tell our listeners how we got connected, which is kind of funny. So I'm pretty big on just kind of scouring Instagram hashtag pages. And randomly one night, as I was watching TV probably, I came across you on Instagram, and I don't know if it was through a vegan athlete type hashtag or vegan CrossFit or something. And I was like, whoa, who's this guy? He's, it says right on the top of your thing that you're straight edge and vegan and you do CrossFit. And I was like, dude, that's insane. Like, I didn't know there was anybody else in the world that existed like that, I thought I was the only one that kind of met all three of those criterias. And then I looked and I was like, holy shit, he's got quite a bit of followers, like over 100,000 followers. And it took me a little while to even realize that you were a member of Fall Out Boy, because most of your Instagram page is just CrossFit type stuff.
Yeah.
So I was like, whoa, that's really cool. So it was very ironic that literally probably 5 or 6 days later, I was shooting photographs at one of the NPGL Grid League events, and it just so happened that you and your girl were sitting front row. And I was like, wait a minute, I just saw that guy on Instagram. Like, how weird is this, So I went up to you and introduced myself, and was just like, it's kind of awkward because how do you tell somebody like, hey, I'm just kind of like you know what I mean? And we should meet. But that's basically what happened. So that's how we got connected. And then, I started following you on Instagram. And once I did the podcast, I knew right away that you'd be a perfect person to interview. Again, because there's not many vegan straight edge CrossFit people out there.
Not many of us.
Definitely not. So with that said, why is your Instagram so heavy on the CrossFit side and not very heavy on the band side of things?
I don't know. I mean, the band is what I do every day for what I've done every day for like the last 12 years or whatever. So I feel like for me, it's not that exciting or interesting to post pictures. I mean, I will once in a while. Like, I met Vin Diesel the other day at a band function. That wasn't really band related, but I feel like the band account kind of handles pictures of the band or whatever.
Right.
And I kind of even like being, I like the fact that people may see my Instagram and not even realize who I am.
Yeah. And
if they do, then they just see like the things that inspire me on my personal time, which is fitness and CrossFit and veganism and, whatever. So maybe that can like be something that leads them to trying one of those things.
Yeah, that's cool. So have you had fans of the band, reach out and say that because of you inspired them to start CrossFit or maybe go vegan or anything like that. Have you seen a lot of that?
Oh, totally. There's definitely fans that have become vegan or straight edge or tried CrossFit or at least like started adding some aspect of fitness to their life, which to me is more important than, you know, them being fans of the band. Is like, hopefully I can change or open people's eyes to these different things that I think are really important in people's lives. Like a lot of our fans, you know, are kind of misfits and probably had, you know, like like us in the band have had like, you know, weird times in high school or growing up. And I just feel like the confidence, like, that you gain from CrossFit or from fitness is so important and something that, you know, people just don't realize is there. Or like the willpower from being vegan or being straight edge and just understanding the agency and the power you have to change things in your own life and in the world. And, you know, it might be a small building block into making the world a better place, but being vegan is a hugely important thing. Or, you know, the clarity of mind for being straight edge is a hugely important thing to kind of, you know, be able to be present to do all these things.
Yeah. So I kind of want to break this interview up into a couple different parts. Since we're already on the topic of CrossFit, we'll start there. So can you give me a little bit of your background and how you got started in CrossFit or how you found it?
Yeah. Maybe 7-8 years ago, I discovered Jim Jones, which is like a kind of CrossFit-like thing. Originally, the guy who started it, Mark Twight, was a part of CrossFit and kind of broke off. So it's functional fitness. It's more strength and conditioning. They're the gym that trained like Superman, Henry Cavill to be Superman, the Cast 300. And so I got into that, and I got like really into functional fitness. And then it was maybe 3 years ago when the band started back up, 3.5 years ago, that I started actually dropping into CrossFit gyms and going that route, you know, more CrossFit proper. And it was really then, you know, dropping into different CrossFits around the world and being like plugged into this amazing community of people where, you know, every gym I've been to has been so welcoming, you know, not even knowing who I am and you know, like everyone knows who does CrossFit, like the last person to finish is the person that is cheered for the loudest. And there's just something about that was so amazing and touching and like empowering. And I just loved it. And that's kind of where the love for CrossFit came. And then, of course, this is when, you know, 3 years ago is when the Open really started taking off. So being able to like take part in that, and you know, you're competing with people around the world, you're competing with yourself and kind of, you know, able to submit these scores to a greater community. It just was such a cool thing to be a part of and so inclusive. And I don't know, it really like focused what fitness is for me. Like the community of it, the sport of it, even like the fact that CrossFit is its own sport and this, you know, thing that I can do even on my free time touring so much. Like I can at least do the Open, I can at least do the team series, if not, you know, different. I really want to compete, but I'm just all over the place, so it's hard. But
yeah,
so it's a really cool thing to be a part of.
I can really relate to the traveling part and kind of going into gyms that are, you know, really welcoming with open arms. You know, I've been traveling quite a bit over the last couple of years, and I've had the ability to drop into probably 25 to 30 different gyms all around the world at this point. And it's really cool. Like you said, you know, the community aspect of it. I remember being in South Africa going to this gym, and every day after the workout, I would just find a random person that I just met that day to give me a ride back to the hostel or to drop me off at a food spot or something, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And every time it was, you know, oh, sure, yeah, I'll take you, no problem, you know? And what's also cool about traveling and going to different gyms that I've found is that you get to see kind of different coaching styles, different methodologies of how they program their workouts, and even see bad coaching, which once you see some bad coaching, it kind of gives you appreciation for the better coaching. So that's
totally.
always cool to see as well. So let
Yeah,
me ask
absolutely.
so let me ask you this. It sounds like you've been into the fitness thing for quite a while. Were you an athlete growing up? Oh, and actually, I've got to ask you this one too. Did you ever skateboard or ride BMX?
I skateboarded for maybe a couple days and just sucked at it. But I grew up with a lot of kids who skateboarded and still do. BMX, not really. I had a GT Performer when I was a
Nice.
kid because it was just cool,
Yeah.
but I always wanted to get into it, but I'm just not the most adventurous person in terms of stuff like that where I'm breaking bones all the time.
Yeah,
So
for sure. So like I said, it sounds like you got into the functional fitness thing quite a while back. So were you an athlete before that of, other team sports or anything like that?
not too much. I played soccer when I was young and softball, but in high school I didn't really do anything, which I really regret because I was into punk rock and hardcore.
Yeah.
And I think there was, at the time especially, there was a thing where you just don't play sports if you're into that stuff. But I always loved sports. I've been a huge Green Bay Packer fan my whole life, and that's been like a hugely important thing for me. And I always played like flag football with friends or touch or tackle for a while. So I always did that, but never like organized.
Yeah. Okay. So I know that you also said you have a backyard gym, and if I'm not mistaken, you actually got that affiliated through CrossFit HQ. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, it was kind of a backyard basement gym when I lived in Milwaukee, but I actually just moved to Portland, and
cool.
the place I have now has like a detached garage that I have like a pretty much fully functional gym with like a rig that has like 4 squat stations and a rope and muscle up stations and stuff. So yeah, I love CrossFit. I thought it would be cool to affiliate, even though now I'm not really doing anything with it, but I could affiliate as I affiliated as CrossFit XVX. So it's like vegan straight edge CrossFit, which is awesome. And I do have the hope, eventually to do something with it when I have more time. I think besides music and the band, CrossFit is my biggest passion, and it would be cool. I've kind of had the idea of maybe doing something on tour, like some kind of hour-long or quick seminars at different gyms that I could, invite fans to and like kind of open their eyes to it or whatever.
Yeah, that would be awesome, man.
So
'cause-
hopefully I could figure something out with that.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. I mean, knowing how diehard there are fans out there, that would be such a cool way to, interact with them, but also, like you said, open their eyes and expose them to something that they might not have seen otherwise,
Yeah, totally.
So, damn, yeah, keep me up to date if you ever do something like that. I'd love to hear how that goes.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have a favorite CrossFit athlete that you like to follow?
That's tough. I've, been able to meet a bunch of guys, whether it's through Grid or through, different CrossFit gyms and dropping in. I don't know about a favorite though.
All right, how
think-
about a couple top ones that you're just fans of?
I think my favorite's Josh Bridges, just
Okay.
because I follow Invictus competition when I'm home and when I can drop in and do an open gym. So I just love all the Invictus athletes. I think, obviously they won the Affiliate Cup last year, so they've got a great team. Rasmus looks like he could be a contender for the podium or at least top 10 now that he's individual. Josh Bridges is like a short maniac who just goes, which I love that. Pat Barber's actually my favorite. When I got my L1, he was one of the coaches there, and he is another like short dude who's just so strong and so fit, and like I think NorCal is probably my favorite team for that side of things, and I totally think they're going to win. Pat Barber's sick. They got Miranda. They have Khalifa. I just think, how can you beat that?
Yeah.
And I think they're a great team. We'll see how. I mean, obviously Froning's great, and James Hobart. I haven't met him yet, but we have a mutual friend, so I think that'll be really fun to watch. I think that, a side note, just on the teams, I think it's so cool that Khalifa and Froning and Hackenbrook went back to team, because I think it puts more focus on the team aspect. And obviously, you can tell with the regionals, they spent a lot more time making the team workouts more of a real, true test, which is awesome. So like watching Ute CrossFit was great. I got to drop into OPEX a couple times and train when the Phoenix Rise guys were training, and they came out to a show. So Danny Nichols, OPEX Red went to the games now, and there's so many. Like I dropped in it's usually places I've dropped into. So I was really hoping Emily would win, and she did.
Yeah.
I got to meet her at Terminus, and her team took first too, which is crazy that they got number one across the board. I dropped into Krypton, so I watched Adam Klink and Ben Smith and Alex Smith, which was great. It's great that Ben went back to the games.
Yeah.
I met Noah through LA Rain, so it was awesome that he won.
Yeah.
He looks to be a dude who could take a podium spot for sure.
He's definitely one that I have my eye on this year. And it's so funny. I'm sitting here just smirking listening to you because, I knew that you kept up with it, but obviously, like, you're into it, man. You're really into it. And I think that's so freaking cool. On this, kind of along the same line, do you happen to have a CrossFit crush or a chick that you're just super into?
Of course. I mean, I think everyone loves Lauren Fisher. She's great. But I met Rasmus, so...
Yeah, I actually recently
good
filmed
for
a couple
him.
videos with him for Pure Pharma.
What's that?
I actually recently filmed a couple of videos for Pure Pharma with Rasmus.
Oh, awesome.
So I got to hang out with him at Invictus and stuff.
He's a beast.
Yeah, he's really cool, super nice guy.
Miranda's cool.
Yeah.
And just watching her documentary on her car crash and stuff was super inspiring and super awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And just to kind of fill in the listeners, Miranda Oldroyd is one of the CrossFit seminar staff, and she actually broke her neck a couple years ago and didn't even know it until like way later. So CrossFit HQ made a really dope documentary about that. So I suggest anybody listening to this, go check that out at youtube.com/CrossFit, and you can look up Miranda Oldroyd, car crash or something. I'll link it on the show notes.
It's cool because it literally saved her life. Like, she could have died if she wasn't so strong,
right,
and functionally built from CrossFit.
Yeah. So keeping in theme with the favorites, do you have a favorite workout or a favorite movement that you're into when you're training?
I think bodyweight movements are my favorite. I for lifts, deadlift for sure, because it's my strongest. As of now, I'm at a 345 one rep max.
Nice.
And then for Olympic lifts, probably the clean. Anything overhead, I hate. I have bad shoulders from years of drumming and hunching forward. But I don't know. I'd say burpees maybe, because I can just do them pretty fast.
Nice.
And
it's funny. Somebody actually posted on my Facebook. They asked me to ask you if you've ever thrown your drumsticks in the air, dropped and did a burpee, and got back up and caught the drumsticks and kept in time.
That's a good idea. And I might have to add that to my repertoire for the next tour.
That would be awesome. So you said 345 deadlift. What is your height and weight right now?
I'm about 150 most of the time, and I'm 5'6".
Okay, cool. So, of course, a lot of people are going to want to know this, and I certainly do too. How do you keep up with your training while you're on tour and stuff and you're away from home? I know you just talked about dropping in at some places. Do you always drop in at a CrossFit box, or if you can't do that, you just don't work out, or do you do things in a hotel room or just in parking lots?
I drop in. Well, my normal routine when I'm home is Monday through Wednesday, Thursday active recovery, Friday, Saturday, Sunday rest day.
Okay.
Because I follow Invictus competition, and that's a pretty good template. When I'm on tour, I'll kind of drop in whenever I can, because there are days that are so busy I just can't. I can't even do like a hotel workout or whatever. But so I get a pretty full week almost every week when I'm on tour.
Cool.
Especially like an American tour, it's easy because our schedule works where I have time in the morning, so I can get a noon workout or a 10 a.m. workout or whatever. When I can't, when I'm traveling internationally or whatever, and it's hard to get in, I'll definitely do like a hotel workout or just work out in my room or go for a run or whatever I can do, and just do a quick mat time or whatever.
Yeah. Do any of the other guys in your band or kind of on the crew that travels with the band, do any of those guys do CrossFit as well, or train
No.
with you?
Absolutely not.
That's funny. So while you're on the road, it's just you, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's looking at my notes here real quick. Yeah. So let's move on kind of away from the CrossFit for a bit and touch on a couple of the other topics that were interesting to me is the straight edge thing. So give me your background with being straight edge / drug free. Maybe give people, a quick definition if they're not really sure what that is.
Yeah. Straight edge is basically this movement started by Minor Threat in the early 80s. It's like a hardcore subculture, and it's basically drug free. No smoking, no drinking, no hard drugs. I think there's different interpretations by people about sex, but to me, it's not a puritanical Christian religious thing. So I think sex is a normal, natural, awesome thing. So, but yeah, I got into it when I was 15 is when I became straight edge. So it's almost 20 years now.
Okay. So
this
you're about
November, it'll be
35?
20 years. And it was Earth Crisis, really. I mean, I got into like all the youth crew stuff, like Youth Today and Bold and Gorilla Biscuits. And I wasn't straight edge at the time. I used to like smoke pot and drink when I was pretty young. But it kind of fractured my relationship with my mom, and she was really bummed out. My dad died when I was 5, so like I think she was really nervous that she was losing me. And I was into hardcore and a lot of straight edge bands. But it wasn't until Earth Crisis that really like solidified it and politicized it in a way that really spoke to me. And I'm like, yeah, fuck that. Like, I don't need that stuff. And like drugs aren't more important than my relationship with my mother. And like I don't want to do that. And I was politicized to an extent by Rage Against the Machine, for human rights stuff or whatever. Mm-hmm. But Earth Crisis, like, put it in a context where, there's more to it than just that. There's, the clarity of mind that's really important. Like, if you care about, revolutionary or rebellious ideas that straight edge brings, or, the animal liberation side of it where, I can't just care about, one set of precepts of justice and not care about another. I can't pick and choose my ethics if I want to be like an ethical person living in this world. So it was really Earth Crisis that did it. And
so you
once
said that was when you were about 15 years old, and you're 35 or so now. Is that right?
Yep.
Cool. So I have a relatively similar story. I actually never did drink or smoke or anything ahead of time. But I was 15. A friend of mine in high school, actually the guy that gave me my nickname, introduced me to Earth Crisis, and he was drawing X's on his hands and stuff back then. And at the time I had never had the desire to drink or smoke or anything. And that was kind of a time when all the other kids in high school were starting to do that and get into it and experiment with it. And
Yep.
I looked up to this older friend of mine, and he showed me these bands like Earth Crisis, and I was just like, yeah, this is something I identify with, And so for me, like you said, a lot of people have different interpretations of what it is or what it means to them. And so for me, I kind of decided at that age of 15 or so that I just didn't want outside substances to affect my decisions or my mind or my actions. And anything that I did, I wanted it to be because I was clearly thinking about it, and I made that conscious decision to do so. And so I kind of decided that then, and I've never had the desire since then to drink or smoke or anything. And for me, you know, a lot of people say that I have great willpower. You know, I'm 32 now and I've never been drunk in my life. I've never touched a cigarette or a drug or anything in my life. And people say, oh, you must have so much willpower. And how do you stay away from temptation? But it's not willpower to me because I've never even had the desire to. So I'm kind of in an interesting boat in that respect. And I think that's hard for people to wrap their head around, the fact that to me it's not willpower. It's just how I'm wired. And I make weird, dumb analogies sometimes. And I tell people, like, you know, do you ever wake up in the morning and think like, man, I really don't want to go play golf today. I've got to stay away from that golf course. No, you don't do that because you're not a golfer. Like, it's just something you don't wake up and think about. And I'm the same way with drinking or whatever. Like, I don't wake up thinking like, oh shit, I really want to drink today, but I got to make it another day without it. You know, I'm just not wired that way. So I'm wondering if you kind of view it as willpower or anything like that these days, now that it's been so long without it, you know?
I feel the same as you. I mean, early on, I was into smoking pot when I did, or drinking. And I definitely have an addictive personality where, you know, I think addiction runs in my family. And so I kind of, when I made the choice, it was kind of this thing like, I wasn't there yet. I wasn't addicted or anything, but I was like, I don't want to be. And I see what it was doing in my relationship with my mom. So, and straight edge is cool. Like, I loved straight edge hardcore bands, and there was this part of it that there's this. That's, I think, why I love CrossFit so much, because hardcore has that same community, and then a sub community of straight edge and vegan straight edge. Like, there's just something cool about that, and like having a community of other people who are, you know, feel similarly. But yeah, at this point, when I made that choice, it was like, this is forever, and I've never had a day where I didn't feel that way. Since 15, for 20 years, straight edge has meant as much, if not more, every day. Like, I love being vegan straight edge. It's one of the most important things in my life, and always has been. And if it's been this long, I feel like it always will be. So
yeah,
for me, it's definitely not really willpower either. It's just how it is.
Yeah, for sure. So how did your relationship change with your mother, and do you still have a good relationship with her now that, you know, you're kind of past that point?
Oh, totally. I mean, it helped that she was super happy that I made that choice, and still is. And she's always been supportive, like the most supportive person in my musical career. So, you know, definitely becoming straight edge, like, fixed our relationship. And like, because I, you know, now in hindsight, I can understand how like a 14, 15-year-old kid doing that stuff would be terrifying for her. And I'm all she has. Like, so, you know, I'm really happy I did that then and figured it out. And, you know, we're really close. She's one of my best friends, you know, the best person in my life, who's, you know, made me who I am. So.
Very cool. Going back to kind of the community of straight edge and stuff, at a certain point in my life, I sort of stopped kind of claiming, you know, the term straight edge, if you will, because I felt like in my social circles and where I was in life, there wasn't anybody else that kind of knew what that was and identified with that. And there was a lot of kind of negative connotations around it. I remember seeing something on TV where it's like, oh, these, you know, straight edge kids like blew up in McDonald's because X, Y, Z, or they, you know, would destroy things. And, you know, there was like these negative, violent tendencies kind of associated with that term or with that subculture or whatever. And so personally, I never really like talk about, you know, the term straight edge unless I'm with somebody like yourself that can really relate to it. And when I'm with other people now, I would just say, you know, I've never drank, I've never done drugs or whatever, and I would just kind of call it like it is, you know. And I guess the reason I'm saying this now is just so the listeners know that, you know, I did come from that place. I'm not going to say like I went away from it, because I didn't, but I think there's not necessarily a need to label myself, you know, especially when it could turn some people away and make people think differently of me or more negatively towards me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I understand that. I think that's totally valid. For me, I mean, I came from, like, I got into straight edge through, like, I mean, my first exposure to it was, like, youth crew bands, which is, you know, all about PMA, positive mental attitude. So for me, it's always been a positive thing. And and all my friends that I've met through it have all been like really positive and cool. And so the negative aspects, you know, are definitely not the greatest thing for it. And I have, you know, friends who are in hardcore bands or were in hardcore bands and touring a lot who are straight edge and maybe stopped being straight edge or sold out because the negativity around it was just such a bum out to them, which I totally understand. My experience has been being like a pop punk band and then, you know, now a pop band. Like, so, you know, we live in a world now, I feel like, where there's a lot of people in like big places that are straight edge or were straight edge or know about hardcore. So I've even being in this situation where, you know, there's not a ton of people, like a ton of other people that are straight edge. People still kind of understand what it is or have heard about it or have been or maybe still are. So like, I never got burnt out by like the negativity that kind of came up at a certain point. And I think for me, it's always been such an intensely personal thing. It's never been a decision that I feel like everyone needs to make. It's always been a decision that I know is just this thing that I need in my life that's made my life better and what it is. And I don't know, I totally understand the labeling thing. And I feel that way about a lot of different things. But for me, like, I really cherish and embrace the label because maybe even because of all the negativity and sensationalism around it. Like, it's a talking point, kind of like CrossFit. Like, I love CrossFit, and like I think a big part of it is that, you know, at different points it's been so controversial and such a sensational thing to people that at least I was in this band Race Trader that was like a really in your face kind of, you know, hardcore band, political hardcore band that was calling everyone out and pointing fingers. And I came into it kind of after that era of it where it kind of chilled out and was a little cooler because I'm not that person. And I don't think anyone in the band really was. I think the point was, you know, people talk about these things but don't do anything. Like, the point of that band was to like, let's get people so mad that they can't not think about it when they go home, you know, like, and maybe that'll be the thing to make them do something. And I think there's something about CrossFit that's so cool that, yeah, I feel like it's becoming more embraced by the greater mainstream. Like, there's just a 60 Minutes, you know, on Glassman, which is great. And I thought Glassman came across really well and like such a maniac and in such a great way, and I loved it. And it's like, if it gets people talking and if it gets people questioning like the paradigm of fitness that exists, of bodybuilding and aesthetic based training that has no functional basis, I think that's so important that at least people are thinking, at least people are talking, like maybe this isn't the right thing. And for me, the same is true for straight edge. Like, if people's only exposure is negative and then they find out I'm straight edge and they're like, hey, so are you about this? Are you in a gang? Like, at least I can be like, no, not everyone's like that. Like, this is what it really is. This is what it started out as kind of, you know, a response to the negative aspect of punk rock and hardcore. Like, that's what it was about. Like making a positive, like, change in this music that had this drunk, negative, you know, drug-fueled thing to it, you know?
Yeah.
So if it gets people talking or thinking about it, I think that's good. But I can definitely understand, like, you know, your take too. And I think, I don't know what would have happened if I was just in hardcore bands all this time, if I would have been burnt out. Because, you know, I'm not a negativist. I'm more of a PMA positive person, glass half full.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So the $1 million question that I'm sure you get asked all the time is, you know, what is it like being in the industry that you're in that, like you just said, it's kind of fueled by, you know, alcohol and drug use, and that's not uncommon in the music industry. What's that like for you?
I just don't see it as much, and it's definitely there. I don't think it's as big as it was like in the 80s and 90s with a lot of the hair bands or, you know, a lot of the bands grunge bands in the 90s that were obviously on heroin and people dying from it. But it's still there. I think, people I probably know who do it, I just think kind of keep it away from me because they know it would bum me out or it's not something I want to see. So really, I don't run into it all that much. I mean, obviously drinking, like there's times where the band will be hosting something at a party or whatever, and I'll go, and that doesn't bother me. Like, I'm either just annoyed by drunk people or find it entertaining and fun to interact with drunk people because they're just, what can you do but laugh?
Right. And I love this answer because I feel the same way, and it's kind of like when people ask me these types of questions, it's like, it's really not that big a deal. You know what I mean? Like,
totally.
From their outside perspective, they're almost like, oh my gosh, what's it like? It's got to be so hard. It's got to be this. It's like, no, it's just, this is life. You know what I mean? It's not that big a deal. It's not that difficult to deal with. It's not a big adjustment. Like, if this is how you live your life, then that's what it is. And
totally.
There's really not much more to it. So I love that answer.
Well, yeah, for me, it's a personal thing. And, like, I don't care what other people do if that's what they want to do. Like, that's fine. Like, I would like everyone to consider straight edge just because I think it makes... It can potentially make everyone a better person, but that's all whatever anyone else decides. I mean, I think people assume it's going to be like veganism, where if someone's eating meat in front of me, now that's a different thing because I'm ethically vegan. So, like, obviously that bothers me in a different way. I mean, I have friends who do eat meat, and they're still my friends, and I love them, but I definitely don't dig that.
So let's start on there then. Let's get into that a little bit and give me your background on veganism.
I became vegan in like 97. I was vegetarian for a year or two. I think I became vegetarian around the time I became straight edge. And then it was really when I met Pete from my band, who was vegan at the time. He was the first vegan person I had ever met who kind of gave me advice and told me what to do and like what to get. And, at the time, veganism was a lot harder and not as big. There weren't Whole Foods. There was a tiny natural food section in grocery stores where you could get like Harvest burgers or whatever. So it was a lot harder at the time, but it's something I definitely wanted to do, and the ethics of it, were something I cared about, and animal liberation is something that really struck a chord with me. And then since then, I've been vegan, and it had never been hard because it wasn't. I mean, I kind of always ate crappy, so it's like not at the point where I started reading ingredients and realizing what I'm eating. I think it only made me eat better because I started questioning what I was eating, and only put me on a path to, even if there were times where I was like on a Taco Bell diet, a vegan Taco Bell diet, at least I was like, coming to a place, where I could grocery shop and get better things. And like, I had never really been a vegetable person growing up, but now I am being vegan because it's a huge part of it. So
yeah, I found when I went vegan, which was only about a little bit over 2 years ago, before I was vegan, I didn't like tomatoes, onions, peppers, mushrooms, like all these staple vegetables. And then after I made the switch, I was like, well, I guess I better learn to like this stuff because it's what I have now, And of course now I love it all and feel so much better because I'm eating those kind of foods. So my question is, what is your philosophy on food? And I'll preface this with saying that I was doing a little research on you before we did the interview, and saw your MTV Cribs episode where you pulled out some kind of prepackaged frozen foods out the freezer and stuff. So are you still, do you eat, prepackaged type of foods, or are you totally away from processed foods now? Or kind of where are you at with your current food philosophy?
Yeah, I don't really care about whether it's prepackaged or not. I mean, I live in Portland now, so there's 1,000,001 options for like food that tastes really good and it is really healthy. It's a bowl city, so there's like, amazing bowls with quinoa and avocado and, good vegan proteins and good vegan carbs and good vegan fats, and you know, macro, like a good macro ratio is important to me. When I can, I'm on tour a lot, so, and on a bus, so frozen microwave foods are kind of a staple that, you know, at certain times I have to eat. I try to, like, I guess, limit that in my life, but.
Do you have kind of a go-to meal while you're traveling, whether it be a restaurant that you can usually find in different cities, or, you know, stuff that you bring on the bus?
On tour, maybe like the sofritas from Chipotle is okay.
Yeah.
You know, that's fine. Like, in a pinch, that's something that's like all right and I can eat. On the bus, I don't know. I try to do mixed green salads with different, like, Gardein proteins and avocado and stuff, because we have a fridge and stuff. So
you just hit the grocery store and kind of
I think
stock up?
Gardein's. What's that?
So you just hit the grocery store and kind of stock up and just keep stuff in the fridge on the bus?
I'll go to Whole Foods, or, you know, we have a rider where I have a lot of Whole Foods stuff brought in.
Cool.
I think Gardein's like one of the cleaner packaged proteins. Tempeh is great. I don't really care, though. I work out. I think I have, you know, a pretty intense workout program when I'm on it. So I feel I can get away. I'm not eating for competition. If I was, I'd probably tighten it up a little bit. And on tour it can be hard too, because when I'm in a city with a restaurant that has, you know, awesome stuff that maybe it's not the best, or, like, you know, donut shops or dessert, you know, I'm not going to eat. And I think, you know, as long as my training's up to snuff, and then when I hopefully I'm eating 80% of the day better, like, I feel like it kind of mitigates the damage.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, donut shops, man. I'm
yeah.
actually happy that there's not a vegan donut shop, like, within 15 miles from here, because the closest one is a good distance away, which makes me not go there ever. But if it was close by, that would take some willpower.
I have Voodoo Donuts now, so.
Oh, dude, you're right. Oh my, yeah. Portland is amazing for all vegan food, man. I've been up there a handful of times, and such good food. How far are you from Voodoo Donuts? Is it pretty close?
I'm like 20 to 30 minutes outside of the city, so it's not like
it's not like right down the road.
But it's not bad.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, if it was right down the road, that would be tough, I think.
It is. I think there's a thing about living in a place where now I have this always, so I don't go there as much as I would have thought I would.
Right.
It's usually when someone is visiting and it's like, I gotta go to Voodoo. But the great thing about Portland is there's so many options, and there's so many good options, you know, like, so I can kind of lean on the good options most of the time, and then once in a while, you know, have a couple bad things.
Yeah, gotcha. Cool. So we touched on the CrossFit, the straight edge, and the vegan, and now I want to talk more about the business end of your career and your life. So let me get my notes in order here and figure out where I would like to start with you. Let's start. I don't want to talk a lot about, like, actual background and band stuff, because I think that's probably been done to death with most musicians. But just real briefly, can you tell me when you did realize that you had a talent for music, and, you know, when you found out that you could make a living from it?
I think a talent for music was early on, because I played saxophone first thing, but I had always played drums and loved drums. And it wasn't until maybe 6th or 7th grade that I started playing drums in band. And then I'd always done well and been first chair or whatever. And then, you know, as soon as I could do bands, I was always doing bands. So I think early on it wasn't even a thing like, oh, this is something I can do. It's like I grew up listening to Slayer and Metallica, and music was my life. This is the only thing I can do. There's nothing else for me in life.
Wow.
You know, at the time. And, like, So I don't think it was ever an option of doing other stuff. Like, I definitely had other passions. Like, I went to college for anthropology and history and wanted to be a professor maybe and wanted to teach, which I think is a reason, you know, coaching eventually in CrossFit is something I really do want to do, is because it is teaching. And it's teaching in a way that's so empowering to people and changes their life on such an amazing level. And it's still, you know, could scratch that itch of wanting to teach. But I think the point in the band, it was kind of like, wow, we could do something. I had done bands with Pete for years. He was in Race Trader for a time. We did other hardcore bands. I did other hardcore bands with Joe as well. And then Fall Out Boy started maybe a year and a half before I joined. And I was doing 3 bands at all times, so they didn't ask me because I was already like going to college full time, doing 3 bands. But they asked me to fill in on a tour. And then after the tour, they started writing stuff for a new album. And they had another drummer. And, you know, apparently the guy producing it was just like, yeah, I think we should get Andy to do it because, you know, he had heard other stuff I did. So then I was just like, yeah, I'll just join. Like, I'd been in bands with most of these guys except Patrick. And once I heard the songs they were writing and heard Patrick's voice, which really started to come to life, I think, for the early Take This to Your Grave stuff, I just, you know, I didn't, there wasn't necessarily a response that made me think. I just was like, wow, this is the best songwriting I've been a part of, the best singer I've worked with. Like, I believe this could be something. And then, you know, it started blowing up in Chicago and things started happening and it felt like this could be something that could go somewhere. Like, I dropped out of college and everyone else did as well, and we just started touring full time to see what would happen. And it wasn't instant. It wasn't like the next day we were huge. It was a slow, like, our first tour was to no one. The second tour was to maybe a few more people. So it was like a slow process, but, you know, you could tell, like, it was something that a couple people cared about. And I think that's the thing. Like, I think if you believe in the thing you're doing so much, you know, and you have something that's unique, like, people catch on to that, you know, that means something to care about what you're doing. If you're doing it because you're writing, you know, whatever the script is for a pop song and you just want to get big, that can work for people, but there's something fake and empty about it. And I think for us, we just believed in the thing, you know?
So I was going to ask if it was kind of your goal when you started playing music to be able to make a living from it. But it sounds like it almost wasn't a goal. It was just like a guarantee in your head almost. Is that kind of what you're saying? Is that like you never even considered doing anything else with your life?
Yeah, totally.
Wow.
And I don't think it was a guarantee that I would be able to do it, but it was like, I'm going to do this, whether I'm just kind of scraping by and doing like odd jobs when I'm home. I'm going to tour and I'm going to be in bands that tour and going to be making music as my main focus, and then do whatever I to kind of make it work.
Gotcha.
So it was kind of an all or nothing. It was definitely an all or nothing. Like, the fact that I was able to do it as a living and then get to the point I am is insane, and I'm so grateful and thankful, and it's amazing, you know.
So at what point were you able to kind of stop any of the odd jobs you might have had in between tours and stuff and just say, okay, I don't have to work anymore, and, you know, music is my work now and it is my full-time income?
It was maybe a year and a half into Take This to Your Grave record cycle that we actually started making something, and then we kind of had a soft deal with Island Records for the next album, where if Take This to Your Grave did well and they wanted the next record, they could do that, and we could say yes, we'll do it, and it worked. And then, you know, so we officially signed with Island Records, and that was kind of the point where I was like, holy cow, like, this is I can do this as a living. And you know, the whole time throughout any of this, I know in the back of my head this isn't guaranteed. Like, just because I sign with a major label doesn't mean you're big. There's so many artists that do that and then never even have a record come out because they record and the label doesn't believe in it, so it just gets shelved and they own it, so you can't do anything about it. Or, you know, it can happen, you can have a song that does well and then that's it, and then you're done. You know, even when we came back a couple years ago after being on hiatus for a couple years, we knew, like, there's a huge chance no one will care about this again. So, like, you know, we've never taken it for granted, and I think we've always approached every record like, you know, we can't just do what's safe. We have to take a risk and, like, do something that we believe in and that motivates us and inspires us and changes and flips the script a little bit. I think every record's kind of been a little different. So I think there's, you know, something about risking it a little bit each time you make a record or whatever. But back to the point, like, yeah, I think it was about when we signed with Island where it was like, okay, we could do this, and we're going into a real studio to record like a real album, like, and it was crazy, and it, you know, it's like, what do you have to lose? You just kind of put everything on the line and hope for the best.
Yeah. So you mentioned your band took a hiatus, which is kind of a well-known fact about Fall Out Boy. During that hiatus, did you have to go back to working different jobs? I know you went back to working with some other bands during that time, but did you rely on other income, or did you have money from music where you could still just focus on music full time?
Yeah, Fall Out Boy did well enough where I could live off of it for a while.
Cool.
But, I mean, doing other bands is just like, I can't not play music and make music, so I have to keep touring. Like, I don't know what to do with myself otherwise.
Yeah, gotcha. So let's talk about how a musician gets paid. So I'm always really curious about the business end of people's lives. And again, you don't have to say any specific numbers. That's not what I'm after. I'm just curious how it's broken down. So I've got a list of questions. I'll just kind of brain barf, and maybe you can fill in some blanks here. So when I think of a musician, I think of, you know, you and your bandmates somehow split profits, and I'm curious, you know, is there a certain percentage split? Is it all even split? I'm curious what different avenues you guys create revenue from. So there's albums, there's merchandise, there's concerts. You know, how are those split up? How does that work with kind of the record labels and the promoters and stuff? Can you sort of give me a breakdown of just the economics of, you know, being a rock star, if you will?
Yeah. I mean, every band does it different. We do an even split, 25% for each member, just because even if, you know, the way it works for music is the songwriting, so the melody is a part of what makes you money, and the lyrics are part of what makes you money. So rhythm and drumming don't make you any money. Like, I don't get paid for writing a drum beat. But I think the idea early on, because we come from hardcore and it's kind of DIY and it's kind of an egalitarian, equal thing in hardcore, you know, we wanted to approach it like that for the band, and just realizing that there's a lot of bands that do split it between songwriters and if you write songs, and there's a certain incentive, you know, to make you write a song if you're getting paid for it. But I think there's a better incentive to kind of have an equal share. Like, we all pull our weight in different ways and have our, you know, we bring different things to the band and do, like, play a different part. You know, Patrick writes most of the music. Joe started to write a lot more, but it kind of all funnels through Patrick as, like, the head songwriter who kind of puts it all together. Pete writes all the lyrics, but it still kind of funnels through Patrick, who, you know, will cut and paste the lyrics to fit to a rhythm in a song. And, you know, I kind of work with Patrick separately when we record to, like, you know, maybe structure the songs more and then kind of figure out what to do when we're in the studio. But, you know, again, song structure doesn't really matter, but I think song structure is such a hugely important part of bands. So I think there's an incentive to everyone kind of having an equal stake. Like, you're going to pull your weight if that's the case. If one other guy is getting paid everything because they write everything, and then you get to a point where even if you did write, it's not going to make it on the record because the other person's been writing so much. Like, what's the incentive to care, you know? So, but a big thing is that, you know, record sales aren't, especially nowadays, aren't a huge part of where bands make their money.
Right.
It's just, you know, obviously the record industry's been in like a ever-changing thing for, you know, about a decade now. We were at the tail end of record sales being a thing, and now it's kind of in this new thing with Spotify and whatever. So monetizing that's a different thing. I don't really care, and you know, I'm cool with however people get their music. I think people getting the music is the important part. You know, we've been asked a lot about Spotify and what we think about all that stuff, and Pete has a good answer that, you know, art does have value, and I think it's just figuring out what the value is to each person and to the people putting in the time. Like, to us, it doesn't matter as much because, you know, we have, you know, we're making money or whatever, but to new bands like who are putting everything on the line and need the time to be able to create something amazing, like, yeah, I think it's important that they get paid and like are able to like pursue that like solely, you know. But of course there's musicians who have made it having to work a million jobs and writing in their spare time. So there's so many different ways to approach it, but I think the most money is touring, like, you know, ticket sales, and then merch sales are a big part of it. Like, in today's record industry, like 360 deals where the label kind of gets a piece of every aspect of the touring, of the merch sales and stuff, is how a lot of labels make money now. We were lucky enough to come about before 360 deals really started taking off, so like we have most of our, I think almost all, besides booking agents and all that stuff, we make all the money from our tours and our merch sales. And
Okay, that's interesting.
so that's a big part of it.
Cool.
And that's why bands tour a lot, in addition to the fact that touring's kind of the place where you really get to connect with the people who making music worthwhile. Like, art becomes real when it becomes a communal thing. Like, as people, you know, other people become a part of it, interpret the albums you write in different ways, and, you know, the album titles or the lyrics or whatever mean different things to different people. That's kind of what makes it cool and living, you know?
Do you feel like, again, not knowing anything about the business side of the music industry, are you involved in any of the business type things, or are there managers and labels and other people handling everything and you just show up and play the music?
I've never been like super involved in that stuff, but the band is. That's more Pete. Pete's like a consummate businessman, and I think the reason for our success is because Pete is a really smart guy who has, you know, he's just a great chess player in terms of business, where he's always thinking, you know, moves ahead, and the direction and focus and like message of our band has always kind of come from him and all of us. I think he's able to kind of interpret all of our things, you know, into what the band is, and I think the four of us is what makes it the thing that it is. But he's really good at kind of, you know, turning that into a business thing. So he's definitely involved 100% in all that. Like, but there are tons of managers doing tons of stuff and booking agents, and that's just like par for the course. We can't book our own tours and do all of them and do all the press and travel all the time. So you need people who kind of, you know, are relegated to taking care of like the specific things, and like, you know, obviously like making deals like is a legally binding thing. So you need like lawyers and managers who like make sure that, you know, we're protected and our interests are taken care of. But in terms of like the choices we make as a band, that's definitely something we're all a part of. And, you know,
Cool.
we're asked about, you know, every major decision that's made, like we're all on board.
So when you get paychecks, does it always come from, let's say, the label or one particular place? And 'cause I'm, you know, like you said, you make money off of merchandise. You make money from the tours and the shows. I assume you make money from maybe it's endorsement deals or licensing royalty deals. You know, Century Song, dude, I've heard it everywhere. You know what I mean? It's on commercials, and I'm pretty sure I've heard it on NFL football games. So are all those things or avenues where you're generating revenue, does that all filter through, say, the label or through one place, or do you kind of get paychecks from different places?
I don't know the specifics super well about all that. I know we have like a publishing company that deals with all the licensing for TV and stuff. So that comes from a publishing company. Record sales and stuff probably comes from the label. And then touring stuff comes from, you know, our booking agent and whatever, like kind of filters through them. But we have like a business manager that it all goes there. And our business manager kind of deals with the taxes and all that stuff.
Cool.
And then it comes to us. So like, I don't fully know where it all comes from. I mean, there's tons of places. Like there's weird production companies where we get checks for like being on the Tonight Show or whatever. There's, you know, tons of different places.
So all those places goes through a business manager, and then the business manager cuts you one check that kind of includes everything.
Yeah, it'll be like quarterly, let's say. Right. So, you know, we'll have cash on hand so we can buy flights and like rental gear. And then, you know, when there's so much surplus, that's when we kind of get paid out. Like when a tour is done and all the accounting's been taken care of, then we'll kind of get like, you know, one check that, you know, will be a certain amount. And then, you know, still a big chunk of it's in there to take care of any other future stuff that's happening in hotels and all the ins and outs of touring.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I'm so glad I asked you this stuff. And like I said, it's just me being inquisitive about how different businesses run. So hearing all this is just really kind of eye-opening and just cool to hear.
I think it's like any corporation where like corporations just have to keep a certain amount of cash at hand because there's so many things going in and out, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it basically sounds like, you know, the band itself is a business entity. You guys are essentially employees of that business. And so everything goes through the HR department, which is your business manager or whatever. Yeah. So cool. Yeah, it totally makes sense now. I'm stoked that I learned something new today. Do you guys get bonuses if you or when your records hit platinum or double platinum, or when you guys win awards? Is there, you know, does extra money come in for those type of things somehow?
I don't think for awards. You know, maybe if we like perform at the award show, like I think we get paid for that. I don't even fully know. I don't know if every award show we played we get paid for, or if it's just considered like promotion, so we do it. I'm not really positive. I'd imagine we get paid, but I don't know.
Cool.
But yeah, definitely not for awards. I think that's more just, you know, the award itself is the thing. But I do believe when you go gold, or when a song goes platinum or a record goes gold or platinum, like I do think there's maybe a bonus. I'm not entirely positive. I at least think that when you hit gold, let's say, that means you've paid off the advance that you took out. So at least now you're like not in the, I don't know how corporations say it, you're not in the black anymore or whatever. Okay. Like now you're making money from the record itself.
Right.
Because you know, you get an advance for the record, which includes the cost of recording and the cost of, let's say, living while we're recording, because we're not touring. So, you know, that money goes to like, you know, renting a hotel or food or whatever. So we have to pay that back. And I think, you know, to a certain extent, like you're not really making money on the record at all because it's just the record's recouping their expenses. But at the point it goes gold or whatever, then you're starting to make money.
Got it. Cool. So one would assume that being a popular band like Fall Out Boy, millions of records sold and everything, one would assume that you guys have made pretty good money. So going into these questions with that assumption, I'd like to ask if you've learned to kind of manage that money or invest it, and if so, where do you learn that? Because I'm really interested in personal finance, and I've picked up kind of a financial mentor that's really helped me figure out how to manage my finances and how to grow my net worth and how to invest some money. So I'm wondering if, now that you've come into success, if you've had some help along the way with that.
A little bit. I mean, the first thing I ever did when I made any kind of money was pay off all my debts, because debts just suck money from you. So that was the first thing I did. And then at some point I got a financial advisor. So I'm not the best at investing and all that stuff. I don't know anything about it, or I don't care too much, but I have a financial advisor that I really trust and I know is doing the right things, and we talk about like what things I want to do. So that's definitely something that helps. And
cool. And where did you find this financial advisor or get connected with him?
He was friends with our business manager.
Okay.
And he did stuff with different people at Lucasfilm. So I was like, sounds like the right guy. He has some connection to Star Wars, so that's cool.
Nice. So when speaking with your financial advisor and you're kind of telling him your goals and stuff, what is important to you? My initial thought is it important to you to set yourself up so that, once you're done touring with Fall Out Boy, once you're done recording records with them, is it important to you to be set so that you don't have to worry about working after that fact and you could just keep focusing on your passions, whether that be CrossFit or other bands or whatever?
Oh, totally, yeah. That's my main focus with having a financial advisor is, I just want to set myself up so when this ends, which could be any time, who knows, I'll be set for life or at least for a long time. So that's my main focus. And I can kind of do it with, we're touring a lot and things are going really well right now. So I have a little leeway, and I think, moving's a huge expense. So obviously that's been a big thing right now, kind of transitional time. Where it's nice that we're still touring, because that can be scary because moving is a huge thing, especially across country. But I feel really good that is the case, that I'm kind of setting myself up for that. And anytime, if I'm ever spending, I don't buy a lot of stuff. I mean, besides comics and food, and maybe I spend too much money at Rogue Fitness. I feel like I go on there and I'll just buy something to buy it. I just bought 3 new bars. I bought the Bergner Bearing bar. I bought the West Side Powerlifting bar, and I bought the competition bar, the shorter one, so you can have it on a field with a bunch of people.
Yep.
But it's also 35 pounds, so that's why they always put the 2.5 plates on it to make it 45. And I don't know why I bought that. I was just like, what is the bar they use like? I want to see. So I probably spend too much money on stuff like that, but that's all stuff I can use, and I do use. And it, and in moving, I've purged so much stuff that I either gave away to Goodwill or sold, at bookstores or comic shops. I sold almost my entire physical comic collection because I'm pretty much all digital now, because it just makes sense. I tour, I'm not able to be home and enjoy my comics, so why have them? So I feel like I do pretty well and not, just buying cars all the time.
Right.
I don't have drug expenses, which I feel like is what bankrupts so many musicians. So I feel like I'm in a good place where I kind of have a little leeway to buy video games when I want and whatever, and not have to worry.
Yeah. What What prompted the move to Portland?
A lot of things. First off, Portland's always a place I wanted to go. Like at least have like maybe a second residence or something, because ever since the first time I came here, I just fell in love, and it's such a beautiful place, and it's a city that feels like it's in the woods. Like it's not so concrete based, and obviously there's such a cool community of super diverse people here. It's like Austin in that it's like really weird, and every single type of person and personality is accepted and embraced, and like it's probably the vegan capital of the world. Like there's just every place has vegan options. There's like 3 vegan only bars, like, which is great because they're open late. So even though I don't drink, I can go to a bar and have a reason to be there, and they have amazing like mocktails. There's a couple bars that have this drink called the Floor Punch, which is a straight edge drink, and it's awesome.
What's in that?
It's like the sweetest. It's kind of like like cranberry, whatever, sweet stuff with soda water or whatever.
Okay.
And so it's kind of a little bitter, like alcoholic drinks are supposed to be, but in a good way because it's good, and it's got like lime in it and stuff.
Nice.
But yeah, so I love it here, and it's so vegan friendly. I'm a big coffee snob, so it's one of the coffee capitals of the world. There's tons of amazing CrossFit gyms. There's CrossFit X Factor, where they had, one of the open workout with Josh Bridges and Scott Panchik, where Scott Panchik came out to a Fall Out Boy song, which was cool.
Oh, nice.
And then he won. I don't think that's a surprise, even though I wish Josh Bridges won. But there's a lot of great CrossFits here. CrossFit Fort Vancouver, which was Affiliate Cup winner a couple of years ago, is like 20 minutes away, like in Vancouver, Washington.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. And I'm also like a 40-minute flight from San Francisco, and then there's NorCal, then you got CrossFit San Francisco or whatever, where Kelly Starrett is. I think that's where he is.
Yeah.
So many like good places. And then I'm closer to LA, which is where the band lives,
Okay.
where we do all our recording, where we do all our video stuff, all our photo stuff. Like most of the press stuff is in LA. Cool. So it's a 5-hour flight from Milwaukee, or it's like a 1.5 to 2 hour flight from here, which is much easier.
Yep.
But I didn't want to live in LA. I don't love LA I love LA, but I don't love it as a place to live.
Yep.
So cool. Portland just made sense.
Yeah. Sounds good. So we're going to start wrapping things up. I've got a few questions here that I call quick hits that you can either answer short, or if you want to talk a little bit longer about them, that's fine too. These are questions that I ask most of my guests, the same questions. So I'd like to know, when do you feel like you get hit by ideas or inspiration the most?
Oh man, definitely at night. Like there's definitely nights where I can't sleep because my mind is just racing, and then I feel like all the best ideas come. That don't ever come when I'm awake, and I can like do things about them. But now that I'm been trying to sleep for 2 hours and I need to be up at 7 a.m., I have all the best ideas, and I have to get up and like write it down on a computer or whatever the case is,
So is that what you do, is get up and write them on a computer as opposed to having a notepad by your bed, or like talking on your iPhone into the notepad or something?
I do that too. Yeah, usually it'll be on my like notes on my phone. But if it's like a bigger idea, like I'll have to get my laptop out, because I feel like I can just communicate ideas faster on a real keyboard.
Yeah, for sure. How do you decompress?
For me, that's definitely CrossFit and, being home, hanging out with my friends, going to movies. Like, it depends on where I am, but I guess it's the same answer every time, because on tour, I usually hang out on my own. I find a box, I find vegan food, and I find coffee. And that's kind of how I get away from, the insanity of being trapped on a bus and on tour. And it's a pretty comfortable touring life for me. But still, it's nice to get away and feel normal and like, not only be at these venues all day.
Yeah.
And then the same is kind of true when I get home, like, getting into a routine on my training and, hanging out with my friends. Like, that's how I kind of decompress and kind of separate from, the insanity and busyness of an exhaustion of tour.
Do you meditate at all?
No, but I really would like to, because I think it would be a really helpful thing for me.
Yeah, that's something I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I keep hearing so many people talk about how good it is, and I listen to all these podcasts and follow all these people that just rave about it, and I'm slowly but surely starting to try to do it. And one of the biggest things, and maybe this will resonate with you a little bit too, and I talked about this on a podcast that's going to be released after this one, so people might hear it a couple times, but I listened to an audiobook by Mark Devine, the guy that created the SEAL Fit program that incorporates Navy SEAL type training with CrossFit stuff. And in that audiobook, he talked about how learning to control your breath and meditating relates to training, because if you can sit still and quiet your mind when all these thoughts start to pop up, then when you're training and, say when you're doing Fran and that set of 15 thrusters gets really heavy, and your brain starts to wander and play tricks on you, saying put the bar down, you can just tell your brain to shut up, because you've come to learn how to turn your brain off like that. And so when I heard that in the audiobook, I was like, damn, okay, that's why I need to start meditating. That's my big reason of why to start doing it. And I haven't got onto a good program or schedule with it yet, but I'd really like to keep working on that. And it's definitely on my list of goals this year, is to figure out a good meditation practice.
Absolutely. My friend, one of the guys who lives with me, there's some app he told me about. I can't remember what it is, but it's like a daily meditation thing where you just kind of like check in, to keep you kind of honest about it.
That's
I wish I could.
Sort of what I've been doing, actually. The app I downloaded is called Headspace.
That's it. Yep.
So they do, like, your intro thing is like a 10-day deal where it's 10 minutes for each 10 days. And a couple of them, they'll have like a little video animation that sort of preps you and explains what the practice will be about today, or what to keep in mind during the practice during that day. So it's been about a month and a half probably since I downloaded it, and I've done 7 of them, I think, as of today. 'Cause I did one this morning, actually.
Nice.
But we'll see how it goes.
I think that's, well, just real quick, I think that's such a good point, though, is like the how it relates to training. Like the philosophy of Jim Jones, which I'd consider my alma mater gym, is the mind is primary. And I think that's so true, that the mental aspect of training is the most important. Like, picking up and putting down heavy things is easy. Anyone can do it. Like, it can be hard to pick up heavier weight, but anyone can pick up a weight. I think the part that is hard is is fighting those demons that tell you to quit. Like, you can't get through it. Like, stop now. That's the thing that about intensive training like CrossFit that I think is so cool, is learning to say, no, my body can do this. I have to get my mind to a place that realizes I can do this, and that's such an important thing, that you're totally right. Like, meditating and kind of getting to a quiet place can help.
If there was a movie made about your life, what would be the hardship or obstacle that you had to overcome in order to achieve your success?
Oh man, that's tough. That's really hard. I don't feel like I've had much to hardship to overcome.
That's fair. I'm actually kind of in the same boat. Not that I'm a great success necessarily, but I never had any crazy moments in my life necessarily. So cool. We'll skip that one. No worries. Let's see. Before I end with my final question, I'll ask you something that I don't necessarily ask all of my guests. But since you've had success and fame and popularity throughout your career, can you tell me one or two of the coolest things that you've had the opportunity to do because of your band's success or your success?
Yeah, I think traveling the world is one of the coolest things. We've been to some crazy places like Uganda and Africa, and it's just such an eye-opening experience to be in a place that there's nothing like it in a first world country like America. Like, it's crazy, and that's the real world, and it's sad, and it changed my life. What's that?
I said I've been there. I know what you mean. I spent about 2 weeks in Kenya. I'm sorry, Rwanda, and then we went through Uganda and spent some time in Kenya as well. So
Yeah.
life changing is definitely a proper terminology for that.
Definitely, and it stuck with me. And but I mean, on the more positive side or whatever, I'd say like doing stuff with Jay-Z was amazing. Playing like Madison Square Garden was a highlight. I just saw Pitch Perfect 2, and we have a song that's in it at the end, which was stuff like that is still mind blowing to me, and kind of like, wow, like we made a song that is super culturally relevant because it's in this weird movie, this a cappella movie, which I love that movie, by the way, but that was a moment. Like there's just little moments like that all the time.
Yeah.
I mean,
cool.
I think the moments for me have been being able to meet like CrossFit athletes that I look up to, or like comic writers that I love. Like that's the stuff that I care about.
Very cool. So we're going to end with a question that I ask pretty much everybody. Do you have a favorite quote? Or maybe a favorite piece of advice that you've ever been given, or some kind of mantra that you live by, anything like that?
Wow, that's deep. I don't know. I mean, I think most important quotes or sayings, like I said, is the Jim Jones philosophy of the mind is primary. Just because I think the point of training, I'm looking up a quote right now that I like too.
Okay.
Just so I can say it right. But I think, the point of training really isn't just physical. I think the more important part is the mental aspect of, like, being able to. I'm not finding this quote. Being able to like translate, a physical training and getting through like a hard CrossFit workout, let's say, that you don't think you can get through. You look on paper, it looks too hard, or the opposite. On paper, it looks so easy, and then you're halfway through it, and you're like, I'm gonna quit. Like, this is the worst. And that's the worst workouts for me. Look like, oh yeah, I can do this, and then it's like, no, this sucks. But I think I'll look up the quote in a sec. But I think the way it translates to getting through other things in life, like when you're faced with things that seem insurmountable, like whether it's depression or whether it's like, work that you think like I can't do this, or like school, or for fans of ours who are going through things that they don't think will ever end, like the tools that like CrossFit equips you with that you can get through a hard workout, that's so transferable to like getting through anything life throws at you. Because if you can get through a hard workout, you can get through anything. Like nothing is insurmountable, nothing's too hard, and that includes understanding that you may fail, like embracing failure and understanding that failure is only means like you get to learn more from the experience and then grow from that. Like that's so important in life, and I think more people could stand to have that in their life. So the mind is primary is a huge thing.
Love it.
And then there's a quote by Churchill that's like, Winston Churchill said, if you're going through hell, keep going.
Nice.
That's the quote.
Nice.
And I think I don't know if that's one of my favorites. I don't think about quotes too much. Our tour manager, when we get like day sheets every day about what our schedule is for the next day, and he always includes quotes. And that's one that I can remember offhand.
Cool.
I'm gonna have to keep an eye on quotes because quotes are so cool and there's so many great quotes. But that I think is one that is really good, which goes with what I was just saying. Like,
absolutely.
if you're going through hell, keep going. Like, if something's hard, don't quit now. Like, you're going to get through it.
Yep. Awesome. Cool. So we're going to wrap up there. Now, before I let you go, I'm going to re-tout your new album. Fall Out Boy is American Beauty / American Psycho. And that, of course, features the hits Centuries, Uma Thurman, and Irresistible. And it's limited time right now. You can download it on iTunes for $7.99. So all you guys can go check out that. Again, your tour. Next week, you're going to be in the UK for a day. And then you guys will be back in June touring all over the U.S. with Wiz Khalifa for the Boys of Summer tour. And then you're actually going to be in L.A. on August 10th. So maybe I'll get to make it out there and see you guys. And then back to the UK in October, and then you're going to hit a couple other countries in Europe, and actually even make your way into Russia over there in October as well. So that's cool. And you guys can check out all the information about the tour on falloutboy.com/tour. So Andy, do you want to go ahead and plug any of your social networks, your Instagram or Twitter, any of those things?
I'm pretty much just Hurley XVX on everything. So Twitter, Instagram, any social network, I'll be Hurley XVX. Hopefully, unless someone takes it, which I will hate. But
cool. So we're going to have those links in the show notes on the expansionprojectpodcast.com. You can, of course, follow me online at FatTonyBMX on all my social networks. I'm most active on Instagram. Also, don't miss next week's episode with Michael Doyle. He's got a very inspiring story that a lot of people are going to relate to. He looked at something that a lot of people think about doing, a lot of people talk about doing, but they never do. He sold all of his stuff, he packed up his car, and he just hit the road. And now he's living life as a permanent nomad. He's running a business from the road, he's trying to start a new business, and he's just following his passion and following his drive in hopes of making a better life for himself. And of course, subscribe to the podcast and go on iTunes, leave a 5-star review, leave us a rating. I'm sorry, a 5-star rating, and leave a review. Of course, I'd love it for all of you guys to tell your friends about the show and post some links out there to help spread the word. Again, you can go on to theexpansionprojectpodcast.com, and I've got some affiliate link banners up there for Nutrisuma, Chef Kate's Nut Butter, and Amazon. So click on those, buy some stuff. It helps the show out. It doesn't cost you anything extra. You'll get a little bit of a discount. And I think that is about it. So until next time, we will see you later. Thanks for joining.